Hey, this is Clément from Commit, and today we are at MCon 2, and I'm with Dauphren, Cameron, and Drew. How do you feel, guys?
Feel good. Pretty chill. Yeah. The vibes are immaculate at MCon.
Feeling gravy, baby.
So today we are in the Meta Factory booth, if I can say so. Let's start with you, Drew. What is Meta Factory?
Meta Factory, we call ourselves a decentralized culture factory. I'd say, yeah, we're sitting at this really interesting intersection of physical and digital, represented primarily through fashion and garment, and we're exploring the intersection of digital fashion and wearables and physical garments, and how to link these things together, how to create experiences and allow them to cross medium. With this is also the aspect of being a headless brand and a DAO as a brand, where there's no true kind of hierarchical leadership. It's really community driven. All those aspects kind of also feed into this general goal of how we best capture and compensate human labor, which is kind of like the productive engine that drives all economies. And so looking at, both the designers, the pattern makers, the producers, the printers involved in kind of the fashion supply chain, and how we can efficiently capture and distribute value in equitable ways, fairly across that entire supply chain. So looking at decentralizing production and the future of work through kind of this lens of fashion, and at its core, it's just another DAO experiment that trends more into the physical than the raw digital, which is usually what the space is focused on. So.
Okay. And Cameron, you're the founder of Kong, correct? So you are manufacturing some chips that can be also matched with Meta Factory gear. So could you explain how all of this works? Because for some people, it could be a bit tricky to understand how we can have, a hoodie and then a chip and
Yep. So part of Kongland, Kongland is an evolution of experiment that we called Kong Cash. The idea was how do we make the UX of crypto easier to use? So crypto is, again, this totally digital concept. How can we turn these things into physical entities that people can touch? So as one of the core contributors at Kongland, which is a DAO all about making more physical digital entities, the idea is we can make these really small, simple chips. They're effectively hardware wallets, and you can embed them into anything. So they enable, DeFi or D-fashion. They enable art, which is physical with a reflection in the digital. So instead of just purely having a 10K PFP, you can now have, a print which is actually on the blockchain, or an oil painting or something like that. So really, we want to help bridge the digital physical through the chip itself. We're kind of low-level chip people. We work on the tech, and that's why we're super stoked to work with Meta Factory to actually realize it and work with brands who productize it. Exactly.
Various things you can do with the metadata for sourcing, like all the things we were trying to do on Meta Factory side with the distribution of labor, designer, each component of that chain, on breaking down equity and credit and being able to represent them in the garments. Like, it's one thing you could do it on like a shop listing or something on a surface level, but to have it embedded and also put into like those chips as reference, it makes it more of a permanent reference points that gives them that credibility, not only for compensation, but just for the source of where that garment came from. And then taking it next level is, using it as proof of access and experimenting on that front to then have, a footprint of where that garment's gone and stuff, right? Like using it as a access to parties and events or something, and to have that record that's kind of evolving, and to really take the physical NFT element. Like, I think all people still kind of have hit a gap there, even though NFTs and stuff are still fairly new, where they always think of it as just this digital, ERC 271, 1155, something that's just on chain in my OpenSea wallet. It's like, what do you mean like a physical NFT? And it's, so there's this like, slam through that where it's like, no, man, this device is acting as a physical NFT. So like, we'll be able to have representation of like the digital assets where you can have it showing up in your wallet and stuff, but you won't be able to transfer it. It's not going to be liquid on, OpenSea or in an independent marketplace. Like, no, you want that? Like, well, meet up in person or have a service that develops that's able to offer an exchange of products that are chipped. And hey, look, Metafactory and Kong, I mean, these are use cases which, if done, executed properly, like, it's a proof of concept where it's like, all right, let's go. People are gonna be like, we gotta mimic what they did. These guys are hot.
We can use that same technology and hardware to track the supply chain and the actual creation of the garment itself. And so everybody from literally the person who like spun the cotton to the seamstress or seamster to the printer, embroiderer, whoever could fingerprint along the way, and value can flow back through smart contract, automated, back to those producers as items sold. So where we're sitting right now too is looking at how we can actually like bring transparency to those supply chains and try and create tooling to better capture and distribute that value across like all the people who touch it. And so this also becomes interesting in terms of empowering like other brands to do what we're doing and basically like taking our learnings and creating essentially like agnostic tooling that can empower others to do the same thing.
I think what Metafactory has done with these pieces is created an entirely new class of good. So if I take a chip and I just put it on to a 1980s IBM t-shirt, the value is still the 1980s IBM t-shirt. Like the fact that it has a chip or not and you've traced it, like that's not super interesting. But with a Metafactory piece, it's chipped from inception,
right,
and the provenance goes to the chip. So if you get a Metafactory, a shirt, a jacket, the MF80 drop, and you don't have the chip with you, now you've totally devalued the piece. It's lost value because you no longer have that traceability provenance. Like you can still wear it as clothing and it still has some.
Plus the item itself takes on like a life of the history in the sense of check-ins, attendance at parties, attendance at like all that stuff actually, even possibly who owned it before you. Imagine the piece was registered to an address that Vitalik owned, and then you bought it on the secondary market. Like, there's layers. The data, the metadata, is actually the valuable piece in kind of like telling that history, and every garment is unique in that sense as well. So it becomes like a really interesting thing. You might think like number 8 of 42 or 1 of 42 is the most valuable, but as that story takes on a life of its own, it actually becomes unique to itself. And those as like that thinking as a new value class is like a completely new thing as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And have fun in MCon, and do not forget to commit.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you.